Tina Turner's final interview, exposed. 6 artists she couldn't forgive. She smiled for the cameras. She danced like fire. She sang with the strength of generations. But behind the dazzling spotlight, Tina Turner carried wounds that never closed, some left by fists, others by silence. And in her final interview, she didn't rage, didn't accuse, she remembered. And in her memory lived 6 names. 6 artists who, despite sharing the stage or the spotlight with her, left bruises not on her skin, but on her spirit. Ike Turner was the first and most obvious scar. Not just her husband, but her captor. The man who beat her renamed her without consent and reduced her to a shadow behind his so-called genius. She once said she didn't leave out of bravery but survival. When she walked away in 1976 with nothing but 36 cents and a gas card, it wasn't a triumph. It was a quiet declaration: either I go or I die. But Ike wasn't the only one. Phil Spector, hailed as a musical mastermind, stripped Tina of agency in the studio. He wrapped her voice in walls of sound, drowned her passion beneath orchestrated chaos, and used her voice like a tool. He never raised a hand, but his command, "Shut up. Sing it like I told you," was its own kind of prison. She walked away from that experience, never looking back. Not out of hate, but because she refused to be buried in brilliance again. Then, there was Madonna. The media darling, the provocateur, the so-called feminist icon, who in Tina's eyes reaped the praise for battles Tina had already fought with blood, not branding. Tina wasn't jealous. She was hurt. "I didn't fight to be copied," she once said. "I fought to be free." She saw the performance. She didn't see the scars. Even fellow Queen Aretha Franklin, with whom Tina should have shared sisterhood, instead offered cold glances and deliberate distance. At the Kennedy Center honors, they didn't need words. Their silence screamed louder than any tabloid ever could. And the wound that came not from a slap, but from a simple pull of a dress, Mick Jagger at Live Aid 1985. A second of exposure turned into a lifetime of boundary violation. She smiled through it, but never forgot. For Tina, that wasn't rock and roll. That was disrespect. Finally, the silence that hurt the most, Beyoncé. The woman Tina once embraced on the Grammy stage in 2008. The woman who carried her torch but forgot to mention her name. Tina didn't demand praise. She just wanted to be remembered. This isn't a story about drama or scandal. It's a testimony to a woman who survived it all and remembered every slight. Not to dwell, but to finally close the chapter. And maybe to remind us all, even legends bleed. Long before she electrified stadiums, long before she became the undisputed queen of rock and roll, Tina Turner was simply Anna Mae Bullock, a barefoot girl born on November 26, 1939, in the small rural community of Nutbush, Tennessee. Her early life was a hard lesson in resilience. Her father, Floyd, was a sharecropper turned factory worker with a strict hand. Her mother, Zelma, was distant and eventually walked out of the family home when Tina was just 11. That abandonment left a scar deeper than any physical pain. In many ways, Tina's future battles with abandonment and betrayal had already begun in her childhood. After her mother left, young Anna Mae was passed between relatives, often left to raise herself emotionally. But within her was a spark, one that first ignited at church. Gospel music stirred something in her rhythm soul movement, and it would later become the foundation of her explosive stage presence. Though shy off stage, Anna Mae had an innate gift for performance. She couldn't explain it. It just was. In the 1950s, the family eventually relocated to St. Louis. It was there that fate took a life-altering turn. At a local club called Club Manhattan, she saw Ike Turner perform with his Kings of Rhythm. Their gritty guitar-driven sound pulled something out of her. One night during intermission, she asked to sing. Ike was skeptical until she belted out B.B. King's "You Know I Love You." Her voice, even raw and untrained, was pure fire. Ike offered her a chance to record with him, and together they created the hit A Fool in Love in 1960. It was an instant success. But with that success came a new identity, one that was forced upon her. Without asking, Ike changed her name to Tina Turner. He wanted something trademarkable, something he could own, a brand, not a person. That act alone foreshadowed the toxic dynamic that would soon define their professional and personal relationship. By 1962, the two were married in Tijuana, Mexico. Their union was the beginning of both a brilliant music legacy and a private nightmare. On stage, they were electric. The Ike and Tina Turner Revue was raw, sexual, and unforgettable. Their performances were filled with grit, gospel rhythm, and undeniable chemistry. Offstage, however, Ike was controlling, violent, and volatile. He beat Tina regularly, both mentally and physically, breaking her down. She was often left with black eyes, broken ribs, and a shattered sense of self. Yet she stayed for years, because she believed she had nowhere else to go. Tina's pain was masked by her sensational performances. With hits like River Deep, Mountain High, Proud Mary, and Nutbush City Limits, she pushed through, building a powerful public persona even as her private life collapsed. Her famous legs, her spiked wigs, her animalistic stage dancing, these were not just style choices. They were armor. Each heel stomp was defiance. Each scream into the microphone was rebellion. Still, the cost of survival under Ike's shadow became too great. By 1976, during a violent altercation en route to a hotel in Dallas, Tina fled with nothing but her name and resolve. The marriage was over, but the damage remained. In the late 1970s, Tina hit rock bottom. She was nearly broke, reduced to performing at hotels and small venues just to survive. Many had written her off as a washed-up soul singer from a previous era, but what they didn't realize was that Tina Turner was never done. She was just rebuilding on her terms. She embraced spirituality, delving deep into Buddhism. The chants, the discipline, the quiet meditation, it gave her the internal power she had been denied for so long. Slowly, she began to reclaim not only her career, but her identity. And in the early 1980s, the comeback began. 1984's Private Dancer was nothing short of a resurrection. Featuring the Grammy-winning hit What's Love Got to Do With It, the album sold over 10 million copies worldwide. Tina was 44 years old, a time when most female artists were considered past their prime. But she defied the industry. She wasn't just back. She was bigger than ever. The world finally saw her not as Ike's singer, but as her own phenomenon. The decades that followed were a masterclass in reinvention. She sold out world tours, starred in the film Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, and published a best-selling autobiography, I, Tina, which later inspired the biopic What's Love Got to Do With It. Tina's story was no longer just whispered among fans, it was canonized. In her later years, Tina found a love that didn't hurt. She met German music executive Erwin Bach in 1986. Their relationship was slow, stable, and healing. In 2013, after nearly 27 years together, they married in a quiet ceremony in Switzerland, where Tina had chosen to settle away from the chaos of American fame. In 2018, Erwin even donated a kidney to her when she was battling kidney failure. After decades of being defined by men who hurt her, she finally found one who would give life to her. Despite her peaceful life in Zurich, Tina never stopped being a symbol of survival, reinvention, and unapologetic power. She received a Kennedy Center honor, a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award, and induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice, first with Ike and later as a solo artist. Yet for all her accolades, it was her humanity that resonated the most. Tina Turner didn't want to be idolized. She wanted to be understood. Understood not as a legend, but as a woman who fell, got up, fell again, and still found the courage to shine. Her final years were marked by illness, stroke, cancer, and kidney disease, but never by defeat. Even as her body weakened, her spirit remained ironclad. In her final interviews, Tina Turner chose to share not bitterness, but truth. She spoke not to hurt, but to heal. And by naming those who hurt her, not with anger but with clarity, she closed the book on a life that had too often been written by others. Tina Turner was born in Nutbush, but she belonged to the world. She showed us that survival is not just about walking away from pain, but reclaiming your voice, your name, and your power. She was more than music. She was a movement. When Anna Mae Bullock first stepped into the music world, the stage didn't roar in welcome. It waited curious. It was 1957, and America wasn't yet ready for a black woman to command the spotlight with uncontainable energy, sensuality, and sheer defiance. But that's exactly what Tina Turner brought, raw, electric, and unlike anything the industry had ever seen. What began as backup vocals behind Ike Turner's Kings of Rhythm would soon erupt into a blaze that neither man nor machine could extinguish. Tina's path to fame wasn't smooth. It was jagged, turbulent, and forged through personal trauma. Yet it's precisely that grit that made her performances unforgettable. From the earliest days with the Ike and Tina Turner Revue, she stood out not just for her powerhouse vocals, but for how she moved. Tina didn't just sing, she attacked songs. She danced with the urgency of a woman outrunning pain. The stage became her battlefield, and every performance was a war cry for survival. Their early hits like A Fool in Love and It's Gonna Work Out Fine cemented the duo as a force in the R&B world. By the early 1960s, the Ike and Tina Turner Revue had become one of the most electrifying live acts in the country. With a lineup of backing singers known as the Ikettes' tight choreography and an explosive stage presence, their concerts drew packed crowds. Everyone from white teen audiences in the South to soul fans in Harlem wanted to see Tina. She was the engine, the heartbeat, and the storm in the spotlight. Songs like I Idolize You Poor Fool and Tra La 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 carried emotion, rhythm, and sensual tension. But behind the curtain, Tina was shackled. Ike controlled everything: the money, the bookings, the music, and most tragically, her. He was the architect of their early success, but he was also the gatekeeper of her soul. Then came River Deep, Mountain High, a song that would define and divide her. In 1966, producer Phil Spector sought to create his magnum opus. He demanded total control, and for once, sidelined Ike entirely. With Tina's vocals soaring over his infamous wall of sound production, the result was a sonic masterpiece. Though the song flopped in America, it exploded in Europe, earning Tina the recognition that would later be her lifeline. Even Spector, in all his brilliance and ego, couldn't suppress her voice. She shone through his orchestral excesses, sounding simultaneously fierce and fragile. Throughout the late 60s and early 70s, the Ike and Tina Turner Revue toured relentlessly, often performing over 250 shows a year. Their version of Creedence Clearwater Revival's Proud Mary became a global hit in 1971. Tina's raspy, breathless introduction. You know, every now and then, I think you might like to hear something from us, nice and easy. Set the stage for a volcanic explosion of vocals and dance. The performance became her signature. Her gold mini dress, wild hair, and bare-shouldered intensity weren't just fashion, they were rebellion. At the peak of their success, Tina graced magazine covers, television screens, and music charts. But fame didn't shield her. Behind closed doors, she suffered. She once said she would look at herself in the mirror, bruised and battered, and ask, "Who is this woman?" The woman the world loved was a stranger to herself. Still, she performed, because performance was the only space where she could breathe. The breaking point came in 1976. After a brutal beating before a concert in Dallas, Tina fled their hotel with just 36 cents and a mobile gas card. She was done. She hid in a friend's home, facing lawsuits, debts, and an industry ready to write her off. But Tina Turner wasn't born to fade quietly. Her comeback was not overnight. It was a grinding uphill climb. She started over performing in small clubs, opening for lesser-known bands, and doing Las Vegas cabaret acts far removed from the screaming fans of her Revue days. But every step was hers. No Ike, no control, no chains, just Tina. The real turning point came in 1983 when Capitol Records signed her after a stunning cover of Al Green's Let's Stay Together gained traction in the UK. Then came Private Dancer in 1984. It wasn't just a successful album, it was a phenomenon. With producers like Rupert Hine and songs from Mark Knopfler of Dire Straits, it gave Tina the platform she had always deserved. What's Love Got to Do With It became her first #1 hit in the US, and at age 44 she became the oldest solo female artist to top the Billboard Hot 100. The song won 3 Grammy Awards, including Record of the Year. Suddenly, the world realized what Tina had always known: she was never a backup. She was the show. From there, the floodgates opened. Tina released hit after hit: Better Be Good to Me, Private Dancer, and We Don't Need Another Hero. She starred opposite Mel Gibson in Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, expanding her legacy beyond music. Her Break Every Rule tour filled arenas. Her autobiography, I, Tina, co-written with Kurt Loder, revealed the harrowing truth of her past, and the 1993 biopic, What's Love Got to Do With It, introduced her story to a new generation. But her rise wasn't just commercial, it was cultural. Tina became a symbol of reinvention, a beacon for abused women, older female artists, and black women in rock. She defied every category. Too soulful for rock, too old for pop, too black for mainstream Hollywood. Tina shattered them all. Europe embraced her with open arms. She moved to Switzerland, where she was treated not just as a legend, but as royalty. In Germany, she was dubbed the Queen of Rock. Her 24/7 tour in 2000 was one of the highest-grossing tours by a solo artist. Even in her 60s, she danced in stilettos, performed with energy artists half her age couldn't match, and delivered every note with conviction. Her voice, aged by time and pain, remained fierce. It wasn't the same sound from her youth, it was better. It carried experience, defiance, and authenticity. Tina didn't chase trends. She was the trend. Throughout her rise, Tina made it clear she wasn't interested in pity or victimhood. "I am not a victim," she told Oprah. "I am a survivor." She rarely spoke of Ike in later years, not because she minimized the abuse, but because she refused to give him another inch of her legacy. In 2008, she made a triumphant return to the stage for the Grammy Awards alongside Beyoncé, who called her a personal idol. The sight of 2 generations of black female excellence sharing the stage was powerful, though as revealed in her final reflections, Tina had mixed emotions about the recognition she did or didn't receive from younger stars. Still, she performed Proud Mary with unmatched fire, proving that even at nearly 70, she was still the fiercest woman on stage. Tina's legacy isn't just in the charts or awards. It's in the artists she inspired, the barriers she broke, and the millions who saw in her a mirror of endurance. From Beyoncé to Janet Jackson, Mary J. Blige to Rihanna, Tina's influence is woven through the fabric of modern music. She wasn't supposed to rise again. The industry had written her off. Society had expected her to vanish. But Tina Turner didn't just rise, she soared. Not because she was lucky, but because she was relentless. Her fame wasn't a gift. It was earned, fought for, bled for. The world knew Tina Turner as fire incarnate, a woman whose legs could outdance any starlet and whose voice could split hearts and speakers alike. She was the ultimate survivor, a symbol of endurance and triumph. But underneath the glam accolades and stadium ovations lived a much quieter story, one of loneliness, trauma, and truths never fully spoken. Tina's rise to solo stardom gave her control over her life, but the scars of the past never truly left her. She once confessed, "I had everything, but I still cried at night." The stage was where she soared, but when the lights dimmed and she went home, especially in the earlier years, she returned not to celebration, but to silence. The applause never followed her past the curtain. One of the deepest truths Tina rarely shared publicly was the long-term impact of her relationship with Ike Turner. She had left him physically in 1976, but emotionally it took decades. He had broken not just bones, but boundaries. He controlled her name, her image, her future. And while the world cheered her escape, few recognized that starting over at age 40 broke and traumatized wasn't just brave, it was excruciating. Ike had taught her that love meant control. Learning otherwise was a long and painful process. Privately, Tina struggled with deep depression in the years following her separation. There were moments even after her comeback when she admitted feeling empty and unsure of her place in a world that often celebrated youth whiteness and male power. She had fought her way out of one kind of cage, only to find herself in another polished, gold-plated but still confining. She turned to Buddhism not as a spiritual trend, but as a lifeline. Her daily chanting, meditation, and reading gave her an anchor. While she exuded strength publicly, her inner life was deeply contemplative. She often spoke about karma healing and not allowing hate to poison her. She didn't just talk forgiveness, she practiced it, even when others never asked for it. But there were still shadows. One of the quietest tragedies of Tina Turner's life was her complex relationship with motherhood. She had 4 sons, 2 biological, 2 adopted. The oldest, Craig Raymond Turner, born in 1958 when Tina was just 18, took his own life in 2018. It was a devastating loss. In her later interviews, Tina would speak gently about Craig, how he had so much potential, how she always sensed his sadness and how guilt lingered in her heart. She had provided for her sons but admitted that her career often took her away. "I was surviving," she once said, "but I wonder sometimes what they really needed from me." Tina's personal life, while much happier in her final decades, was not without sacrifice. Her relationship with German music executive Erwin Bach was filled with love, but it was also her retreat from America. After years of being exploited, misrepresented, and often overlooked in her homeland, she chose self-exile. In 1995, she left the U.S. and eventually renounced her American citizenship in favor of Swiss nationality. This wasn't just a relocation, it was a quiet protest. "I feel more respected here," she said of Switzerland. "In America, I was never truly accepted." The media often portrayed Tina's departure as a luxury and icon retiring in peace, but it was also a form of escape. Escape from an industry that had tried to discard her, escape from a country that celebrated her resilience but never properly honored her legacy. When she was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with Ike Turner in 1991, it felt like a slap to some of her fans. Tina didn't attend. She was done sharing stages with ghosts. Another hidden layer of Tina's life was her struggle with health. In her final years, she faced multiple life-threatening conditions. She suffered a stroke in 2013, battled intestinal cancer, and lived with high blood pressure that led to kidney failure. In 2017, Erwin donated one of his kidneys to her, a gesture that symbolized the unconditional love she had finally found. Yet even that didn't come without emotional complexity. Tina admitted feeling guilt over the transplant, even questioning whether she deserved such devotion. "He gave me a second life," she once whispered, "but I sometimes wonder if I earned it." Despite her medical battles, Tina rarely appeared fragile. In public, she maintained her grace, her smile, her signature poise. But privately, she spoke about preparing for death. "I'm not afraid," she said in an interview in Zurich. "I've had a full life. I'm at peace." That peace was hard-won. It wasn't just about leaving the stage, it was about letting go of the expectations, the comparisons, and the memories that had haunted her since childhood. Her death on May 24, 2023 at age 83 was announced with calm reverence. Tina Turner, the Queen of Rock and Roll, has died peacefully at her home in Küsnacht, Switzerland after a long illness. The world mourned, but for Tina it was a quiet, close to a life that had often been too loud, too painful, too heavy. Some fans hoped for more, a final message, a secret diary, a letter to the world. But Tina Turner had already spoken in the only language she ever needed: performance. Her truth had always been there in every scream of Proud Mary, every stomp across a concert stage, every flick of her wild lioness hair. Her body bore the bruises of war. Her voice carried the rage of generations, and her silence in the end carried her final truth. She was more than music, more than pain, more than legend. Tina Turner was the embodiment of resilience in stilettos fire forged in betrayal, risen from bruises and polished by self-reclamation. In her final interview, she didn't scream her truth. She whispered it quietly, placing 6 names into the silence, not to accuse, but to be understood. Ike Turner, the architect of her fame and the engineer of her suffering. Phil Spector, the musical genius who buried her voice under orchestras. Madonna, the pop sensation who imitated her rebellion without crediting the blood beneath it. Aretha Franklin, the queen of soul who withheld sisterhood when it was most needed. Mick Jagger, the rocker who crossed a physical boundary that echoed too closely to her past trauma. And Beyoncé, the rising icon who once shared her stage but never spoke her name again. None of these names were dragged through scandal or exposed in tell-all interviews. Tina didn't seek revenge, she sought peace. But peace for her meant remembering who made her feel small after she fought so hard to feel whole. Her story isn't about holding grudges. It's about accountability. It's about what it costs to rise as a black woman in an industry that praises your fire but ignores the ashes you leave behind. It's about how silence, intentional or careless, can wound deeper than words. And most importantly, it's about forgiveness, not as a gift to those who caused harm, but as a liberation for oneself. Tina Turner lived with dignity. She forgave Ike but never invited him back into her life. She thanked Phil Spector for a hit, but never entered his studio again. She smiled at Beyoncé on stage, but refused to let that silence repeat. Her choices were not fueled by bitterness, but by boundaries. When Tina left this world in 2023, she didn't leave seeking applause. She left having earned every ovation she ever received, every stage she stormed, every lyric she bled into, and every single woman who dances freely today stands on the floor she carved with her bare feet. So now, it's our turn, not just to remember the legend, but to understand the woman. What does Tina's story mean to you? Was it the strength to leave, the courage to rise again at 44, or the way she held space for her own healing, even when the world forgot? We invite you. Yes, you to leave a comment below. Tell us the moment that made you fall in love with Tina Turner. Was it Proud Mary, her Grammy duet with Beyoncé, or the quiet strength in her eyes during her final years? Drop your thoughts, tributes, or even your own survival story in the comments. And if you believe stories like Tina's deserve to be told like this video, share it and subscribe to Legends of Black Excellence. Because we don't just honor fame, we honor the fight behind it. This was Tina's legacy. This is our reminder to rise, to remember, and to never let silence bury truth again.